And we're going to pass out some index cards. Again, I'm happy to ask your questions of the panel as our discussion unfolds, and then we'll have some time at the end for open dialogue. So here's some index cards. Just jot down your question and then raise your hand, and we'll collect them up and pass them on to the panel. We're going to open with the discussion of housing. And let me start with you, Anne. Is there enough housing for getting people off the streets? And if not, what can we do about it?
So the quick answer is absolutely not. We have a tremendous shortage of affordable housing throughout not just California or Los Angeles County, but actually throughout the country, and it's happening more and more throughout the Western world. And very affordable. It's almost impossible to find, and that goes all the way up. I mean, if any of you have kids graduating from college now or looking for a place, even just for that, it's impossible. So housing is the #1 reason we have homelessness. There's a direct correlation between the cost of housing, the availability of housing, and the numbers of people that you have experiencing homelessness. Here in Pasadena, the average cost of a 1-bedroom apartment is about $3,200 a month. You need to make over $100,000 a year to afford a 1-bedroom apartment. This is why we have homelessness, and what can we do about it? That's the question. And yes, do we need to build more affordable housing? 100% we need to do it, but it would take too long for us to build to get everybody housed who's homeless. So we need to be more innovative. We need to think of other solutions. We need to be looking at creative ways to get people inside and get them housed. And unfortunately, and this is a whole other conversation, the bureaucracy and everything that we have in California prohibits that. But I'll leave it at that. We don't have enough housing.
And you know, one of the issues that gets a lot of attention, and understandably so, is it costs a huge amount to add additional housing, especially affordable housing. Numbers have been quoted up to $800,000 a unit. That causes people's hair to curl. If they don't resent it, they at least say, how could we ever afford that much? And of course, that's an outlier number, but it is also a real number. There are units that have cost that much. Most do not, but it is very expensive. And the second thing is that not everybody is well suited for an apartment. A lot of people deeply need group settings, structured settings, treatment settings. What about that dimension of housing, group homes and treatment facilities? What's the status there?
So we absolutely, I think just like homelessness has many different forms, and people fall into homelessness because of different factors, the solutions for people is different. I will, however, beg to disagree that we need a lot of group homes and specialized homes. Do we need that? Absolutely. That is actually a very relatively small percentage of the population that needs that level of care. We don't have it, we need it, it's absolutely true. The perception is there are way more people out there with severe mental health issues that need that kind of setting than is actually the fact. What most people need is stability, and they do need a home. But what we've found is that the vast majority of people do very well in their own apartments. Sometimes it's a congregate setting where they have more of a community. We have actually the majority of people experiencing homelessness that we've housed, which is about 5,000 people in the last five years, live in individual apartments in the community and do very, very well. So we need a continuum of services for people. Mostly we just need healthy, safe housing of any kind, and then a small percentage of kind of the board and care of the group home.
Lieutenant Aklufi, one of the other issues that comes up frequently is the perception that people don't want to come inside for reasons that perhaps they're mentally ill and not able to make what would seem to everyone else to be an intelligent decision. And then also the perception that for some people it is a choice, that they are more comfortable out on the street. What's your experience with that? Obviously that has some truth, but how much truth and why?
Because I could use my bigger voice, but well, one thing that I have to say in 18 years of police work, that I could tell you a million stories about interesting people that I've met through engagement with the homeless population in Santa Monica. The fact of the matter is that the vast majority of I think our homeless residents also don't understand. They believe the tropes about housing, about group housing, about shelters, that if they go inside, they're gonna have to give up virtually everything that's important to them. Pets, property, their lifestyle, they're gonna give up they're not gonna be able to sleep when they wanna sleep. They're not gonna be able to eat the food that they want. They're not gonna be able to be in their neighborhood, that they're gonna be taken out of the place where they feel comfortable, and they're not gonna be able to return. And for those reasons, they often are very resistant to go into some kind of homeless housing, because again, they're feeling like they have to give up literally everything, including their power of choice. So they can be unshowered, they can be living in a park, they can be scrounging from meal to meal, and at least they have that choice of their surroundings. They're not being taken away from where they feel comfortable. And we actually had a longtime homeless resident in Santa Monica who, over time, and a lot of connections with our department, with social services workers in Santa Monica, was finally placed in her own apartment over in West LA. And she would do okay for months at a time. Every once in a while, we would find her back in Reed Park, sleeping in the park. And it was one of those things where she just needed a break from her housing to go back to this place where she was really desperately unhappy and was very unhealthy and was aging at way too far a rate. But she still needed to come back because it was a place where she had connections, and that was her neighborhood. And so every once in a while we'd find her and we'd give her right back to her housing, and we wouldn't see her again for months at a time. And I think that's really the reality of it, is that most people would love to be able to have a space of their own. They would love to be able to come inside, but the misunderstanding is that they're gonna have to give up themselves in order to do that.
And Joe, for a lot of people, I'm sure the reaction might be, well, we'd all like to have our own apartments, and if they cost $3,200 to rent, how can we afford to provide apartments for everyone who needs one? One of the other issues that cause people to resist any kind of offer of housing is what you call, or what you address as trauma. Can you talk about not just the rational choice issues, but also some of the ways in which people's whole life experience has been shaped by being... Yeah, sure, thank you. How people's life experience shapes their attitude toward being housed.
Well, homelessness itself is a traumatic experience, right? And so what happens is that we often see, well, why does this person not want to go into this housing, into a housing group? Why isn't that? The idea is that it isn't just that they can't afford that, is that there is a fear of being re-traumatized over and over and over again. And I would suspect that some of us here have been traumatized in some way and can actually relate to how trauma impacts you to the point to where you almost feel like, wow, I'm feeling different about things at this moment in time. And so to actually be sensitive to people in terms of trauma and their fear of being re-traumatized is something that we are just learning, that we're just exploring, that we're just beginning to see that as the lieutenant said, is that sometimes out of that fear of being re-traumatized, hey, I'd rather stay on the streets, you know?
My stuff got stolen, I was sexually assaulted, you know, all kinds of